In the previous sections, we learned a number of methods to send and receive data privately and anonymously. This data can be simple text, or it can be files such as an image, a PDF, a document, and so on. All of these methods used end-to-end encryption, so if the data gets intercepted by any entity, the data will be useless to this entity because it'll be simply gibberish and it'll only be decrypted once it's received by the person that we want them to receive it. This is all great, but first of all, we have to trust that these methods of communication are implementing the encryption properly, that there are no problems or no flaws in the way that they're encrypting and decrypting the data. And what if we wanted to send data through a website or through a form of communication that does not support encryption? In this case, you'll have to manually encrypt your data, and the person that receives the data have to manually decrypt it. Because this is very important, I decided to make a full section on encryption in this course. So, in this section, first of all, we're going to learn about asymmetric and symmetric encryption. You're going to learn how it works and why we prefer to use end-to-end encryption. Then I'm going to teach you how to manually encrypt your data, again, whether it's text or files such as a PDF or a document or a song. You'll also learn how to decrypt this data once you receive it. You'll learn how to sign this data, so when a person receives this data, they can confirm that it was actually sent by you and not by someone else. And you'll also learn how to verify the signatures and integrity of the files and of data that you receive, so that you know that this wasn't played with as it was sent to you, it wasn't tampered with, and to make sure that it was actually sent from the sender and not someone else. So you can use this as another layer of encryption on top of the other methods. So even if you're using a method that supports encryption, you can manually encrypt and decrypt the data just to make sure that your files or your data is as private as possible. And you can use this, like I said, to send files and to send data using unsecure methods of communication, even using normal post, and you'll know if this data gets intercepted, it's still secure and it's still private, because whoever intercepts it will not be able to read it because it'll be encrypted and it'll be gibberish. In this section and in the next lectures, I'm going to show you how to use PGP to encrypt and decrypt texts, files, emails, and we're also going to use it to sign and verify the integrity of files, emails, and so on. This way, we'll be able to communicate safely because everything we'll send and receive will be encrypted, and we'll be able to verify the integrity of the data being sent. So we'll be able to sign whatever we send, and the receiver will be able to verify that this data has actually been sent from us and has not been tampered with. Now, the reason why we're going to use PGP for encryption and to verify integrity, because this is a very strong encryption that stood the test of time and has not been broken yet. Even based on leaked reports, it seems like even government agencies are not able to break it yet. So it's a very, very strong encryption. Even though PGP stands for pretty good encryption, this statement is actually sarcastic because this is a very strong and powerful encryption. Now, in this lecture, I want to explain to you how PGP works in general, and then in the next lectures, we'll see how we can use it to encrypt all sorts of data and how to use it to sign and verify integrity. Now, PGP is a public key or an asymmetric encryption. And to understand how that works, let's first have a look on the other traditional type of encryption, symmetric encryption. So, let's have an example where we have two people, David and John. We're going to forget about how they're going to communicate. We're just going to assume that David wants to send a message to John, and the content of this message is secret message. Now, if David wants to protect his message from anyone who might intercept this message or read it, he can use an encryption key in order to encrypt this message, and this will transform the message into gibberish. Then he can go ahead and send this message to John using any method by sending it as an email or by post or as a text message. It doesn't really matter. And if this message gets intercepted, the contents of the message is going to be gibberish, so it won't be useful to the person intercepting this. John will receive the message, he will open the message will still be gibberish, and then John is going to use the same encryption key to decrypt this message and reveal its content, which was secret message. So, very, very simple. Basically, David uses a key to encrypt the message, John uses the same key to decrypt it, and this way, they're both able to read the message, but anybody who does not have the key will not be able to read the message. So, the same key is used by David and by John. Therefore, this is known as symmetric encryption. Now, you probably guessed it by now. This key needs to be private. That's why it's known as a secret key, because anybody who manages to get his hands on this key, they will be able to decrypt any message that David sends to John and vice versa. So, based on everything that we said so far, we can see that the secret key can be used to decrypt the messages. Because of that, it should be kept a secret, but David somehow has to share it with John and anyone else David wants to communicate with. Therefore, this is a major flaw with symmetric encryption, because the key has to be secret, but at the same time has to be shared, and sharing it with more people increases the attack surface, not to mention the problem of sharing the actual key. How are we going to share it? Are we going to send it in a separate message? What if that message gets intercepted? What if we're sending stuff over the internet and we know how many hops our data could pass by? This could be intercepted, read, and then the rest of our communication will be decrypted. This was the main incentive to come up with a more secure encryption. And this is where asymmetric or public key encryption comes. So let's go back to David wanting to send a message to John, and the content of the message is secret message. In asymmetric encryption, one key is used to encrypt the message is sent in the air, and then another key is used to decrypt the message. So as you can see in this encryption, two different keys are used, and hence the name asymmetric encryption. Now these two keys are referred to as a key pair. They are mathematically related. One is used for encrypting the message and the other is used for decryption. Therefore, the decryption key is never shared, and that's why it's more secure. Now you're thinking, if the decryption key is never shared, how is this going to work? Well, let's go back and have a closer look on how this is going to work. So again, David wants to send a message to John. The content of the message is secret message. But before sending this message and before encrypting it, John is going to create a key pair, a public key and a private key. Like I said, these keys are mathematically linked, and John is going to send the public key to David, to the person that will send the message. So the public key can be shared with anybody. You can actually make it public on the internet, on key directories. It doesn't really matter, because it cannot be used to determine the private key. Therefore, it's completely safe to share the public key. So David receives the public key. He uses the public key to encrypt the message. The message is sent using any method. It doesn't really matter. And even if it's intercepted, it's going to be gibberish. John will receive the message. He will open the message. The message will still be gibberish, but he will use the private key to decrypt this message. This way, he will get the content of the secret message. And as you can see, the private key was never shared. John created the private key and John kept the private key. The only thing that is shared is the public key, which cannot be used to determine the private key and cannot be used to decrypt the message. It can only be used to encrypt the message. So by the end of the communication, David is going to have John's public key and John is going to keep their private key. Therefore, now David can always send messages to John and John will always be able to decrypt them using his own private key. Not only that, but when David encrypts something with John's public key, he can be rest assured that nobody can decrypt this message except for John, because John is the only one that has the private key, and his private key should never be shared if John knows what he's doing, because there is no point of sharing it. Even if he wants 100 people to send him messages, all he has to do is share his public key and not his private key. Now, if John wanted to send something to David, the same can be done in an opposite direction. So David would create a key pair. He would send John his public key, and then John would use David's public key to encrypt messages. When David receives them, he will use his own private key to decrypt them. So the idea is very, very simple. You share your public key, hence the name public. That is completely safe because it can't be used to determine the private key and it can't be used to decrypt the messages. So you share the public key, and anyone who wants to send you a message, they will encrypt that message with your own public key, and this way you will be the only one that can decrypt this message. Same goes when you want to send another message. For example, if you wanted to send a message to me, all you have to do is encrypt that message with my public key, and this way, because I don't share my private key with anyone, I will be the only one that can read the message. So you can put this message anywhere, you can share it publicly, and it'll still be safe because no one will be able to read that message but me. Now that we understand how PGP works, in this lecture and the next few lectures, I'm going to show you how to use it to encrypt all kinds of data, verify integrity, and so on. Now, as I explained in the previous lecture, for this to work, the receiver, which is John in this case, has to first generate a key pair, a public key and a private key. He will share the public key with the person who he wants to receive data from. That person, who is David in this example, will use the public key to encrypt the message, send the message to John. The message will be unreadable unless the private key is used to decrypt it. And as you can see throughout this whole scenario, the private key never left John. So John never shares the private key, and it is the only key that can be used to decrypt the data. Therefore, this implementation is very, very secure. So, like I said, the first step for this is the receiver needs to generate a key pair, a public key and a private key. So, in this lecture, I'm going to show you how we can create our own key pair so that we can share our public key with the people that we want to receive data from, and then they can use this public key to encrypt data and send it to us so that we are the only ones that can decrypt this data because we have the private key. So, in Tails, this is actually very, very easy. You can do it using the clipboard applet that we have in here on the top right. So you can click on it and go to Manage Keys. Now, in the recent versions of Tails, they've been moving this all over the place. So if you can't find it here, we can go to Applications, Utilities, and click on Passwords and Keys. This will open a program that can be used to manage all your passwords in Tails, but what we're interested in is managing our GNU PG keys. Now, clicking on this, as you can see, we have a number of entries by default. Do not delete these entries. These are actually keys used to verify the integrity of updates that Tails downloads and the integrity of packages that you can download through Tails and install on your system. So if you delete them, you won't be able to verify the integrity of these packages. So we're keeping everything here the same, and what we want to do, like I said, is create our own key pair so we can share our public key with others, so we can receive encrypted data that can only be decrypted by us. To do that, to create a key pair, you can click on the plus sign in here, or you can go on File, New, Like I said, this application allows you to manage all sorts of keys. What we're interested in is creating a PGP key. So I'm going to click on the second entry here, and I'm going to click on continue. Now it's going to ask you for your name. So in my case, I'm using John Wick. Next, it's going to ask you for your email address. Now, it is very important to understand that the people that you'll share the public key with will be able to see your name and your email address. Therefore, if you want to stay anonymous and protect your privacy, make sure you use the fake name that you created when you created your fake identity, and make sure you use your private or anonymous email in here. In my case, it's jnck7@elude.in. We're also going to click on the advanced options to select the encryption type. I'm going to keep this at RSA because this is a very strong encryption. We're going to set the key strength to the highest possible, which is 4096. And you can also set an expiry date so that your key expires at the date that you specify in here. Now, this would be good if you want to take your security to the next level, but for this course, it's fine. I'm going to set it to never expire. I'll keep this ticked, and I'm going to click on create to create my key pair. Now, it's going to ask me to set a passphrase for the key. Make sure you set a strong and long one. Click OK. And this program is going to generate your key pair. And as you can see right here, we have a new entry with my key pair. Now notice the icon here for this key pair contains two keys, a silver and a gold one. This means that this is a key pair. It contains a private key and a public key. Notice all of the other entries in here contain only one gold key, which means that these entries only contain a public key. So these can be used to encrypt data for someone else or verify the integrity of data, but there is no private key stored in here. Now, to get more information about any of these entries, you can right-click and click on Properties. And in here, you can see information about the owner. For example, the name, John Wick, like we said it. The email, again, the same email that we set it to. You can see the key ID, which can be used to verify the key, and we'll talk about that later. And if we go on the details, you'll also see the fingerprint, which can also be used to verify the key. We actually used this when we downloaded the Tor browser, if you remember. And as we go through this section, actually, you'll see how the verification steps we followed to verify the Tor browser make sense. And all of this will click with that. Now, from here, you can also export your secret key, which is something that you should never do because, like I said, we should never share the secret key. The secret key should always be kept privately. The only time that you might want to do this is if you're going to completely wipe the system and still want to use the same key. You might want to export this, store it in an encrypted USB device, and then put it on your next installation. Other than that, there is no need to export your key from here. From here, you can also set the expiry. So as shown before, we set the expiry to never, but if you change your mind, you can click on this icon and set the key to expire at any date you want. And going back to the names and signatures, you can see again your name and the email associated with this key, and you can click on add name to add more contacts to be associated with this key. But like I said, be very careful when you're doing this because these contacts will be visible to anybody that can see your public key. And like I said, in general, we will be sharing our public key with a lot of people because this is the way this works so that they can encrypt data and send it to us. So now that we have the key pair created, in the next lecture, we're going to talk about how to share our public key with our contacts, and then we'll see how that can be used to encrypt data and verify integrity. Now that we have our key pair generated, the next step is to share our public key with the people that we want to receive encrypted messages from, so that they can encrypt messages using our public key so that we will be the only people that can decrypt these messages because we have the private key. So in order to do this, you need to come to your passwords and keys. Like I said, you can access this from applications, utilities, and click on passwords and keys. As you can see, I have it already opened and I already selected my key pair, which I created in the previous lecture. Now, in order to export the public key, now keep in mind, we're exporting the public key, not the private key. We never share the private key, hence the name private key. So we're going to go to File, we're going to click on Export, and you need to select the location where you want to store your public key in. Now, I'm going to select my Tor browser directory because I want to share this through email, so I want to add it as an attachment. And as we know, the Tor browser can only access the Tor browser directory in tails. That's why I selected this directory, but you can store it anywhere you want. Now I'm also going to change the format from PGP to armored PGP. This won't really make a big difference. The reason why I'm doing this so that I can show you the content of the key as plain text. So we're done here. I'm going to click on export and that's it. It's done. So if I go to my home directory and go to Tor browser, you can see we have a file called johnwick.asc, and this is my public key that I can share with anybody so that they can encrypt data and send it to me. Now, you can literally attach this file the way it is. You can upload it to a file sharing service like I showed you, or use Onion Share. You can use any method of sharing this file. If you don't want to share it as a file, you can also right-click it, select Open with Other Application, select View All Applications, and select your text editor to open it with the text editor. If I click on Select here, you'll see we'll be able to read the file as normal text, and this way you can literally copy all of this and paste it anywhere you want. So like this, you can share the key without having to upload the file or attach it anywhere. You can copy this text, send it as an instant message, print it on a piece of paper and give it to someone. You can do anything you want with it. So you have two ways of sharing it. You can literally copy this text and send it to the person that you want to receive encrypted data from, or you can attach this file right here. And like I said, you can use any method of communication. It doesn't really matter how you send it. Now, just as an example, I'm going to be sending this as an email. So I've already logged into my webmail, as you can see in here. And what I want to do is send a message. So I'm going to click on Compose. I'm going to put the email of the person I want to send this to. So I'm sending this to another email account that I own for David Smith at elude.in. I'm going to set the subject and I'm going to call this my PGP key. And then you can write anything here if you want in the message. So we're going to say, please find my PGP key below. And you can literally just paste all of the text that you copied in here, like I said, and then they'll be able to use this key as text to encrypt data to you. And we'll see how you can do that. This is the first method of sharing your key. Like I said, you can also share the key file that we exported. To do that, we're going to use an attachment. So again, I'm going to click on Browse and select the key file that we have in here. We're already in the Tor browser directory. So you just double click this and that's added to the attachment. Now, like I said, you don't need to send both. I'm just showing you both here as an example, but only sending the key as a file or as text in here is enough for the other person to start encrypting data for you. Not only that, but you can even add this key to your signature. So every time you communicate with someone, they will see your public key, and if they wanted to, they can encrypt the data that they're sending to you using your public key, and this way nobody can read this data except you. A lot of people even put this in their profile page in forums and even in markets. So if you click on a certain account, you'll probably see their PGP key pasted like this, so that when you communicate with them, you would use this key to encrypt the data, and that way they will be the only people able to read the message because you encrypted it using their public key. So the whole idea is you want to share this with anybody that might want to communicate with you, so that when they send you something, you will be the only person able to read what they sent you. So we have the key here, we have it attached, we've already set the email in the subject. So I'm just going to click on send to send this email. And I'm going to go to the other computer. This is David's computer, the person that is supposed to send messages to John. As you can see, I'm already logged into the email account as well. I'm going to refresh to see if I got anything in my inbox. And as you can see, I have a new message. We're going to go to the inbox. And this message is coming from John Wick. Perfect. So we're going to click on it. And again, as you can see, we have the key in both forms, as an attachment and as text. So now this is David. And if we go back to our diagram, David is the person that wants to send an encrypted message to John. So what John did is he created a key pair. He sent John the key pair. So we have the key right here. What we need to do right now is download the key. And in the next lecture, I'll show you how we use it to encrypt the message. So let's go ahead and download the key. So we have it in here as an attachment. All we have to do is click on download. And as usual, if you click on save, this will only allow you to save it in the Tor browser directory, and it's called johnwick.asc. So I'm going to click on save to save it there. And if we go to our home directory, go to Tor browser, you will see we have the key saved right here. Now I'm actually going to remove this, because I also want to show you how to download the key if it was sent as plain text, if it was not sent as an attachment. So we're going to assume that you just got the key like this as text. So if you want to save a key that you got it like this, for example, if you got it as an instant message, or if you saw it on a forum or on an account where the user was sharing their public key so that you can encrypt messages for them. In that case, if you want to start sending encrypted messages to this person using this key, you want to make sure, first of all, you copy the whole key from the start here all the way down to the end. I'm going to right click and copy. And then you want to open a text editor. So we're going to go to accessories. We're going to open our text editor. We're going to paste everything that we copied in here. We're going to save, Control S or click here. And you want to store this in any location that you want. Now, you don't really have to put it into our browser. I'm just going to put it there anyway. And we're just going to call this John Wick again .asc. We're going to click on save. And again, we have the file now. If we go back to this directory, we have the file, the johnwick.asc, and inside it, it has the content of the public key of John. Now, all we have to do is import this public key to our keyring. To do that, again, we have to open the passwords and keys here. And we're going to go to File, Import, and select the key that we want to import. If you couldn't see it here, then make sure you go to the location where you downloaded it. So in my case, it was in Tor browser. And again, we have the key that we want to import in here. Click on Open. It's going to show you the information of this key. Again, like I said, remember, I said anybody who has access to this public key will be able to see your email address. And as you can see, we can actually see John's email address right here, and we can see his name right here, John Wick. That's why it's very important to use your anonymous or fake identity in here. We're going to click on Import to add this key. And now if we click on our GNU PG keys, as you can see, we have John Wick as an entry in here. And as you can see, John Wick in here has an icon of one gold key. We don't see two icons. Going back to John's computer, if we go to the passwords and keys in here, you can see John has two keys in here because this is a key pair. John has his own private key and the public key. But at David's computer, David only has the public key, and that's why we see only one gold icon in here. Again, if you right click this and go to properties, you'll be able to see the name and the email of the key owner. You can see the key ID, and clicking on details, you can see the fingerprint, which, like I said, can be used to verify the owner of the key. And we'll talk all about that later on in the course. For now, we have imported the public key of the person that we want to communicate with. So right now we can start encrypting data and send it to John. And the only person that will be able to see the content of this data is John, because he is the only person that has the private key. Now, so far we have David who wants to send a secret message to John. To do this, John generated a key pair. John also sent the public key to David. David has downloaded the public key and imported it into his key ring. So if we go to David's computer right here, we can see he has John's public key. So right now, David can encrypt data with John's public key, send it to John, and that way John will be the only person who can decrypt this data, because he is the only person that has his own private key. Now you'll also notice an extra entry in here. I've actually created a key pair for David in this section right here for the sake of completion. You don't have to do this because, like I said, all we need is John's public key to send data to John. And according to the example we're doing, David will be sending data to John. So all we need is John's public key. I just created a key pair here for David just for the sake of completion so that you can see how this will work in a real life scenario. So we actually don't need to use this anymore because David already has the public key of John. So all you have to do is literally start typing the message that you want to send. To do this, I'm just going to open a text editor. So again, we're going to go to accessories. We're going to open my text editor, and I'm just going to start composing the message. So for this, we're just going to say, hello, this is a secret message sent from David to John. Now, before sending this, we're going to select all of this text. We're going to copy it, and then we're going to go to the clipboard applet, and we're going to click on Sign Encrypt Clipboard with Public Key. We're going to click on this, and as you can see, you get a list of all of the public key that you have on your computer. Now, like I said, all of the ones that start with tails are default public keys added in order to verify the integrity of packages downloaded from Tails. You don't want to select any of these. You want to make sure you select the contact that you want to send the message to. And in our example, we want to send the message to John Wick. Now, this is perfectly fine. You can just select it like this and click on OK to encrypt the message. But in this case, even David, so even the sender won't be able to see the contents of the message. If you want to be able to decrypt the contents of the message yourself as well, then you should tick the entry for your own key. So this is David's computer, and if David wants to still be able to see the contents of the message that he's going to send, he should tick this box. Otherwise, we can just tick John, and the only person in the world that will be able to read the content of this message will be John or anyone who has the private key. But if John is using PGP properly, he should never share the private key with anybody, and therefore, when we encrypt a message with his private key, we can be sure that John will be the only person that can read the content of this message. So we're gonna click on OK. It's going to ask us if we trust this key. We're going to say yes, we do trust it. And as you can see in here, you can see the icon of the clipboard has changed to indicate that the clipboard right now contains an encrypted text that represents the text that we copied already. So if in the same text editor in here, if I just paste whatever that is in my clipboard, you will see I'll get an encrypted message. And this is basically the content in here encrypted using John's public key. So right now you can just copy all of this and send it to John using any method of communication. So you can send it as an instant message, you can send it in a chat room, you can send it as an email, you can even put it in a paste bin publicly where anybody can see your message, where anybody can see your secret message. This is the beauty of PGP. You can put this anywhere and nobody will be able to see or read the content of this unless they have the private key of John. And like I said, if John is using PGP properly and he knows what he's doing, he should never share his private key. Therefore, he will be the only person in the world that is able to read the content of this message. Now for this example, to make things easy, I'm going to go back to my email client and I'm just going to reply to this email and we'll put our encrypted message in here. Keep in mind, I'm copying it from the start to the end. I'm going to click on send and that's it, sent to John. So let's go to John's computer. We're going to go to his email account. We're going to refresh the inbox and we're going to click on the message that we just got. And as you can see, this message is encrypted. It's gibberish. We can't really see what David is trying to tell us. So we're going to right click and copy this message. And as soon as we copy it, you'll notice the clipboard icon in here again changes to indicate a lock, to indicate that the clipboard contains encrypted text. We're going to click on this and we're going to say, I want to decrypt or verify my clipboard. It's going to ask me for the passphrase for my key, for John Wick's key. Remember when we created this key, we had to select a passphrase and that passphrase will always be required before you can use this private key. So I'm going to put the passphrase that I set when I created this key. I'm going to click on OK. And perfect. As you can see, we can see the contents of the message saying, hello, this is a secret message sent from David to John. So that's pretty much it. As you can see, the receiver shares their public key with the sender uses this public key to encrypt the message, and then they can put the message anywhere or even share it publicly. It doesn't really matter because the only person that can read this message is the person who has the private key. The private key never gets shared. Therefore, this is a very, very good and secure implementation. So now, in this example, John created the key pair, he shared his public key with David, and David was the one encrypting the message and sending it back to John. Now, if John wants to send something back to David, we just have to do the reverse of the process. So David will just have to create his own key pair, share the public key with John, and then John will be able to encrypt messages and share them with David and know that David would be the only one able to read the contents of the messages sent to him. So far, we learned how to use PGP to encrypt messages so that only the receiver can read the content of the message. To do that, the sender, David in our example, uses the public key of the receiver. So the receiver makes their public key public, as the name suggests. That's fine because the public key cannot be used to decrypt messages. It can only be used to encrypt messages. So David encrypts the message with the receiver's, John's, public key. The message is sent. And when John receives it, he uses his own private key that he never shares with anybody to decrypt the message. Therefore, David can send the message to John in any way he wants. He can send it as a text message, as an instant message, or even using an insecure service. That's fine, because if anybody reads the message, they will see gibberish. They won't be able to see the content unless they have the private key. And as long as John doesn't share the private key, there's no need for him to share it, then nobody will be able to read this message except for John. So that's really, really good. The only problem here is that there is no way for John to verify that the message that they received has actually been sent from David. So like I said, for this to work, John needs to make their public key public. So getting the public key of John is easy. Therefore, John could have it in his signature in his email. He can have it in his signature in a forum. He might have it publicly shared because he wants people to send him encrypted messages. So there is nothing wrong with making your public key public. The only problem is someone can come in, pretend to be David, use John's public key to encrypt a message and send it to John. And that way, John has no way of knowing whether this message did actually come from David or not. To solve this problem, David will have to sign the message. This can actually be done with PGP. So let me show you how this will work with this example. So again, we have David. He wants to send a secret message to John. And as we learned before, the first thing that David will do, he will use John's public key in order to encrypt the message. The message will change into gibberish. Now at this stage in the previous lecture, we sent the message, but this time David is going to sign the message with his own private key. So he still hasn't sent the private key. The message is still at David's end. And what he's going to do is he's going to create a signature for this message. This signature corresponds to this message, and if anything gets modified within the message, if one letter gets modified, the signature will change. Therefore, this signature can be used to verify that the message has not been modified since it got signed by David's private key. Now keep in mind, David is still keeping his own private key. He did not send it through any method of communication. So now we have a message with an encrypted content and with a signature that corresponds to David's private key. Then the message is sent using any method of communication. Like we said, you can even use an insecure method of communication. John is going to receive the message along with its signature. And before decrypting this message with his own private key, what he's going to do is he's going to use David's public key in order to verify the signature. So like I said, the signature was created with David's private key, and then John doesn't have David's private key, but he's going to use David's public key to verify the signature. If the message was not modified, the verification will be successful, and this way John will know that this message was actually sent by David and was not modified by anybody, because like I said, if one letter gets modified, the public key, David's public key, will not verify the signature. So when the signature is verified, we know that David was the actual sender of the message and the message was not modified as it was sent, whether it was sent over the internet, as a text message, or using any other method of communication. The next step is very similar to what happened in the previous lecture. John will use his own private key in order to decrypt the message and read its content, which is just secret message. So as you can see, as a result of this, each party still kept their own private key. Nobody sent their private key to the other party. So the sender encrypts the message with the receiver's public key and signs the message with his own private key. The message is sent, the receiver verifies the signature with the sender's public key and decrypts it with his own private key. This way, he can verify that this message came from the sender. He can verify that the message did not get modified as it was sent, and the message is encrypted, and the only person that can read it is the receiver because he kept his own private key private and it was not shared with anybody. Now, all of this should become clearer in the next lecture, as I'm going to show you how to encrypt messages and sign them as a sender And I'm also going to show you how to verify the signature and decrypt the messages as a receiver. Now that we understand how signing works in PGP, in this lecture, I want to show you how to encrypt messages and sign them as the sender, and how to verify the signature as a receiver and then decrypt the message. So right here, I have John's computer, and let's go ahead and send a message to David. So as we've seen before, the first thing you want to do is open up a text editor. And we're going to type the content of our message. So I'm just going to say this is a secret signed message from John to David. Now, like we've seen before, I'm going to select all of this. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go to my PGP clipboard and I'm going to click on Sign Encrypt Clipboard with Public Keys. Next, we want to select the public keys that we want to encrypt the message with. And like I said, I'm sending this message to David, so I'm going to tick him. You can also tick John if you want to be able to decrypt your own message. And unlike what we did in the previous lecture, before clicking on OK, I'm going to go to Sign Message As. If you click on this list, you will see a list of all of the private keys that you have on this computer. So this is John's computer. And as you can see, the only private key that we have is John Wick's. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to click OK. It's showing a warning about the key. It's my own key, so I trust it. So I'm going to click yes. And then it's going to ask you to enter the passphrase that you selected when you created this key. I'm going to hit OK. And as you can see right here, the icon of the clipboard changed to a lock, which means that now in my clipboard, I have the encrypted message along with the signature. So I know in my diagrams in here, when we were sending the message, I said we're going to send a message with its signature, but in reality, both the message content and the signature is all going to be one block of text. So if I'm back here at my text editor and just paste whatever that is in my clipboard, you'll see we'll just get one block of text that contains the content of the message and the signature. So as we did before, I'm going to go to my email. I'm going to compose a new message and I'm sending this to David Smith. And I'm going to paste the message along with its signature, like I said, and I'm going to click on Send to send the message. Now, let's go to David's computer, refresh our inbox, and click on the new email. We have the message content. So again, we're going to select all of it, right-click, copy. And as you can see right here, we can see the lock on the PGP applet. One click on this and we're going to click on Decrypt Verify Clipboard. So the steps are very similar to what we did in the previous lecture. Now it's going to ask me to enter the passphrase for my own key, for David Smith's key. And as you can see, we see the content of the message. Again, very similar to what we seen in the previous lecture. But at the same time, you can see at the bottom in here, it's telling us that this message has been signed with a good signature of John Wick. We can also see the key ID and the key fingerprint. So right now, we're sure that the person that encrypted this message, the sender, is actually John Wick, and it's not someone else that is pretending to be John Wick. Not only that, but we're also sure that the contents of this message was not modified as it was transmitted to us. Because like I said, when data is sent over the internet or over a lot of methods of communications, it passes through a number of hubs, and each one of these hubs could be modified. Not only that, it can also be intercepted by a number of methods, and when hackers or agencies intercept them, they can modify them, implant data, or remove some data. Therefore, when the signature checks out, as we can see in here, if it's verified, that means that the message was not modified since it was signed by John's private key. Now you can also see that there is a warning saying the key is not certified with a trusted signature. This is fine. You can actually ignore the message. It's just because the key is not set to be trusted. But what's really important in here is to see if this is a good signature, because like I said, if it says it's a good signature, that means that the message was signed by John's private key and it did not get modified since it got signed by his key. So right now we have a method to send data in a way so that even if it gets intercepted by any party, they won't be able to read it. The only person that will be able to read it is the receiver. Not only that, but the receiver will be able to verify that this was sent from the person that they want the message from, so they can verify the sender and verify that the message did not get modified as it was being sent. Okay, so far we learned how to use PGP to encrypt text and send it in a way so that the receiver is the only person that's able to read the content of the text. Not only that, but we also learned how to sign the message, to sign the text, so that the receiver can verify that this message was actually sent from us, from the sender. So it's really, really good, because now when a message is sent, we're sure that it can only be read by the receiver, and the receiver can be sure that it was actually sent from the sender, and he can also verify that the message did not get modified as it was sent. So this is really, really good. The only problem is we can only do this for text. So what if you wanted to send a document or an image? Therefore, in this lecture, I'm going to show you how to encrypt, sign, verify, and decrypt files. So right here, I'm in John's computer. I have the image that we already worked on and removed its metadata before. If you don't remember how to do that, please go back to that lecture. And if I double click the image right now, as you can see, the image works. It shows us a picture of a car. Now, let's assume we want to send this message to David, and we want to send it securely so that if anybody intercepts this message or if anybody manages to read it, they won't be able to see the content of it. They won't be able to see the image. To do that, we're going to right click it and we're going to click on encrypt. Now you'll get a message that is very similar to what we used to get when we encrypt text. You need to select the public keys of the people that will be able to see the contents of this file. In my case, I'm sending this to David, so I'm going to take David from here. And as we learned before, you can also sign the message from here and select your own private key. And that way, when the receiver receives the image, they can verify that the message or the image was sent from you by verifying it with your own public key. So I'm going to click on OK. This will ask me for my passphrase for my private key because I selected the sign option. If you did not select the sign option, you will not see this. And once I put the password, as you can see, I will have a new image created. And this image doesn't really display, it doesn't really work. So if I double click it, you actually won't see anything in here. And the reason for that is because this image right now is encrypted and the only person that can see it is David. So we need David's private key in order to see the contents of this message. Therefore, like I said, right now we're in John's computer. So even John can't see the content of the image anymore. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and send this as an attachment in an email to davidsmith@ilu.in. I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to select the image. And keep in mind, you want to make sure you select the encrypted image, not the normal image. So right here, we have the normal decrypted image. As you can see, we can see it in here in the preview. And right here, we have the encrypted version of it that will not work unless we have the private key of David. So I'm going to click on open and just say test in here in the content and click on send. Perfect. Now the message should be sent. So let's go to David's computer. We'll refresh the inbox. We have a new message. Perfect. Let's go ahead and open it. And we're going to download the attachment. Save it. It's going to go in my Tor browser directory. That's fine. Click on save. And let's go ahead and open the containing folder. And as you can see, we can't really see the contents of the image. Now, this is the same whether this was a PDF or a Word document or any file, really. I'm just using the image as an example. Now, in order to decrypt this message, because this is David's computer and because this message was specifically encrypted for David using David's public key, we can actually decrypt it right here because we have David's private key and we'll be able to see the contents of it. To do that, we're going to right-click the image. We're going to click on Open with Decrypt File. This will ask you for the passphrase for David's private key. I'm going to input it. And perfect. As you can see, this will create a new file. This is the image after decryption. And as you can see in the middle, it said that the signature has been verified. So we're sure that this image was actually sent from John. Now I can double click the image to see its content. And as you can see, I'm able to see the contents of the message. So the idea behind this is very similar to the idea of sending text. We encrypt the message with the receiver's public key. If anybody manages to get their hands on this file, whether it's an image, a PDF, a document, it doesn't really matter, they won't be able to read the content of the file unless they have the private key. Now, there is also one more feature that I want to cover in this lecture, which we can use to sign the file without encrypting it. So if you remember, when we downloaded the Tor browser, we also downloaded a signature and we used that signature to verify that the Tor browser did not get modified as we downloaded it. So you can also do this to any file you send by generating a separate signature. So again, you can do this to any file you want, whether it's software, whether it's an image, a PDF, a Microsoft document, it really doesn't matter. I'm using the image here as an example. I'm at John Wick's computer right now, and all you have to do is click the file that you want to sign, click on sign. It'll ask you which private key you want to use to sign this file. Like I said, I'm in John Wick's computer. The only private key that I have right now on this computer is John Wick. So the only entry I have in here is John Wick. So I'm going to click on OK. And as you can see, this will generate a new file with a .sig extension. This is a signature that corresponds to this file that has been generated using John Wick's private key. So people can use this file to make sure that the image did not get modified since this signature file was created by John Wick. And to do this verification, they'll use John Wick's public key. So the private key is used to generate the signature. The public key gets used to verify that the signature did not get modified. Now, if you're doing this, you will obviously have to send the signature file with the image file to the receiver. So let me do this really quick here. Again, we're sending this to David Smith. And like I said, you want to make sure you first select the file that you want to send, which in my case is the image, and you also need to select the signature. So I'm going to select the image first, and then click on attach. And then I'm going to select the signature file as well, like I said, and we're going to open and click on attach again. And right now we have the two files added to the message. I'm going to click on send to send the message. Now keep in mind, right now we did not encrypt the image. If someone manages to intercept this file, they'll be able to see the contents of the image. We only signed the image with a separate signature so the receiver can verify that the image did not get modified as we sent it. So go into the receiver's computer. Let's go refresh the inbox and we'll go open it. Open the new message. And let me actually delete what I have in here for now. And we're gonna download the image. and then we'll download the signature. And go into the downloads directory. As you can see straight away, we're able to see the contents of the image. So the image was not encrypted because all we did is we generated a signature for the image. So the whole purpose of this is to allow the receiver to verify that this message was sent by John and that the message did not get modified since John created this signature. To do this, you right-click the signature, and we're going to click on Open with Verify Signature. And as you can see, it's telling us that this is a valid signature. And like I said, the untrusted warning can be ignored. It literally just means that the key has not been set to trusted. But the fact that it is saying a valid signature means that this image did not get modified since John created this signature right here using his own private key. So that's it for this lecture. I just wanted to show you how we can use PGP to encrypt files, sign them, so that they can then be verified and decrypted at the destination. And this way we're able to send files securely, because even if they get intercepted while they're being transmitted, whoever intercepts them, they won't be able to read their content. Not only that, the receiver will also be able to verify that the file did not get modified as it was sent, and verify that it was sent from the right person, not from a third party. Now, before we wrap up this section, I want to spend one more lecture talking about another method to exchange keys between the sender and the receiver. So as we learned, we can use PGP in order to encrypt a message and make sure that this message will only be readable by the receiver by encrypting the message with the receiver's public key. Therefore, for this to work, for example, if David wanted to send a message to John, he would have had to get John's public key. Then, same goes for John. If John wanted to send something to David, he would have had to get David's public key. And to exchange the keys, in the previous lectures, we used email to send the keys from one person to another. Now, you can use any method of communication. And like I said, sometimes if you're using a market or if you're on a forum, you might even see the user including their public key in their signature or in their profile page. That way, you can use that key to encrypt messages and send them to that user, and you'll be sure that the only person that will be able to read this message is the user. Now, there is another way of sharing the keys, which I want to cover in this lecture, and that way relies on using key servers. So you can think of this as a computer that's accessible on the internet or on the darknet. It contains a number of keys, and then, for example, if David wanted to share his public key with John or with anyone else, they can upload their key to the server. Same goes for John. If he wanted to share his public key with others, he can upload his key to the server as well. And then, if David wanted to communicate with John, he won't need to ask John for the public key directly, and John won't need to communicate with David directly and send him the key. All David has to do is query this server, the key server that is accessible, like I said, on the darknet or on the internet, and download John's public key. Same goes for John. If he wanted to get David's public key, he can query the server, download David's key, and that way both David and John have each other's public keys, and therefore they can start communicating and encrypting messages to each other using each other's public keys. The only thing that you want to keep in mind when doing this is when you upload your key to this public server, anybody can get your public key. Now, like I said, the public key cannot be used to decrypt your messages, but as we've seen before, there is an identity tied up to the key. Now, we used fake information, but if you're using real information, the name will be visible on that key, and the email associated with that key. Again, like we seen before, when we create a key, we set an email address with that key, so that email will also be publicly available. So if you don't want to make this information available, then do not upload your keys to these key servers. Also, if the key is associated with other keys or part of a chain of trust, these keys will also become available along with the information tied up to them. So any contacts associated with the key will also become available and public once you upload that key to the key server. So again, if you don't want this information to be public, then do not upload your key to the key server and just send it directly to the people that you want to share your public key with. But like I said, the main idea remains sound. Sharing the public key does not compromise the encryption. The public key cannot be used to decrypt the messages. It can only be used to encrypt them. Hence the name public, and that's why we can actually share it with anyone we want, and we can just make it publicly available. Now, let's see how we can do this. So first of all, I'm going to go to John's computer right here. And let's say that I want to make my private key, so this key right here, available, and I want to upload it to a key server. Now, before uploading it to a key server, I need to enable this feature. And to do that, we're going to go to Edit, Preferences, and in here, when it says Publish Keys To, I'm going to click on the drop-down menu and select the server right here. Now, as you can see, this is an Onion service. Therefore, whoever is going to download this key needs to be connected to the Tor network. Now, I'm going to close this. And the next thing that I'm going to do is upload this key to the key server. So to do that, we're going to go to Remote and Sync and Publish Keys. This is telling us that one key is selected and it's going to be synchronized and uploaded to the key server that we selected. We're going to click on Sync, and this will upload my key to the key server that we selected. Now, anyone who wants to communicate with me, with John Wick, they can query this key server and find my public key and use that to encrypt messages for me. So in our example, it's David that wants to communicate with John. We have his computer right here. And all he needs to do is open his passwords and keys from the utilities as we've seen before. And he's going to first select the GNU PG keys, go to Remote, and click on Find Remote Keys. So these are the steps that you need to use if you want to pull a key from a key server. When you click on this, you'll get a search box, as you can see in here, which you can use to search for your contact. You can search using the name associated with the key, as we know that's John Wick. You can also use the email or the ID. I'm just going to use the email, which is jnck7@elude.in. And I'm going to click on Search. Now, as you can see, I have the result right here. Now you can right click and look up the properties of this contact. And you can see this is for a person named John Wick. You can see the email, you can see the key ID, and if we click on details, you'll also be able to see the key fingerprint. Now, ideally, you'd want to confirm the key ID and the fingerprint with your contact before adding this key, because as we've seen, anyone can publish a key to the key server and claim to be anybody. So we're not sure that this John Wick is actually the John Wick that we need to communicate with. Therefore, you should communicate with your contact using another method of communication, for example, by email, by phone, or by text message, and confirm the fingerprint and the ID that you're about to add to make sure that this is the correct fingerprint and the correct ID for the key that you want to add. Now, obviously, John can get this information again by going to his passwords and keys, right-click his own key, click on properties, and he can get his own fingerprint and use that to help you confirm that this is the right contact. Once you're sure this is the right contact, you can click it in here and click on import to add it to your keys. And as you can see, it got added in here into my keyring. And then, as we seen before, you can start typing messages and encrypt them from the applet in here, or encrypt files by right-clicking the files and encrypting them. So basically, I just wanted to show you another method of key exchange, how you can upload a key to a key server and how your contact can download it, or how you can download a key from the key server. Now keep in mind, when you upload a key to the key server, it might not become immediately available. I actually paused the video and resumed recording after several hours after uploading the John Wick key, because usually there are more than just one key server. So when you upload your key to one of these servers, it actually takes some time for the key to be shared with all of the servers and to become available for everybody to download. So if you uploaded a key and your contact tried to download it within the same hour and couldn't find it, then that's fine. Just tell them to wait for a few hours and then they should be able to download it.